Okay. All right, following on from session 1, welcome to session 2. Session 2 is about evaluating the foot in preparation for the shoeing plan, trying to identify internal anatomical structures that relate to external points of reference, and trying to build a trimming plan that's going to match your shoeing plan and your overall objectives. Okay, I'm going to pass you on to Alex now. In a minute we're going to draw on the hoof mapping protocol so we can identify the center of rotation and the dorsal distal tip of P3, and we'll discuss some of the pros and cons as we go through that, and then we'll evaluate the hoof from a lateral aspect, dorsal palmar aspect, and start to build a trimming plan that we can match up towards our shoeing plan, or alter our overall plan in relationship to the shoe that we choose because of unintended consequences that might appear from a trimming plan. Okay, you want to go ahead and map that up then?
Let's do it. Okay, so as you saw in the last session, we removed these shoes, and as part of the foot preparation, we cleaned the foot off, lightly just trimmed up this frog. We've exposed these heel origins here by cleaning away. There's a little bit of periopal that builds up at the back here, and we've also determined the true solar outline here without actually taking any solar depth away. So to start the foot mapping, we need to determine the heel origins here, and we're just going to draw a little line across the back here, just so we've got a reference point. From this heel origin, I want to draw two lines that run parallel with the direction of the frog. So I'll just do that now.
And just before he does the other one, if you just look here, so you'll know on the lateral heel's folded over and is collapsing here in the heel buttress. Okay, so when he draws this, if you look at where the bar intersects the wall, the heel origin is actually there. Okay, that's where it's coming from there. So if you draw from there, you'll be about right.
Okay. So from there, forward. Yeah.
Again, here what you're doing is accounting for the fact that this heel is collapsed and folded under. Okay, and you're looking at the coronary root of it here at the widest point of the frog. So from the point here where the lines intersect the inner border of the white line, we're going to draw a perpendicular line across there, and that will represent the dorsal distal tip of P3.
We always use the inner border of the white line, as that is a true representation of the tip of P3, as it originates from the distal fringe. And now we can go from these, and we always go to the, isn't it right into it? We always go from the furthest one back, if there is slight distortion in the wall.
If we've got a slight distortion and a medial lateral rotation, go from the furthest one back and draw a oblique line across to the opposite origin of the heel.
Okay.
Same on the other side. Make sure you come to where our origin is here. Yeah?
Yep.
There you go. Okay, and if you draw a line across there, you'll see that that is representative of the approximate position of the widest point of the white line. It also, coincidentally, is roughly the position of the center of rotation of the coffin joint. One of the things that I want you to notice while it's got that up in the air is you hear a lot of people talking about equal loading. If you look at these triangles that are formed within this map, from here to here, here to here, this one, and this one, you'll notice that they're all approximately the same surface area. That's what we want to achieve when we've got our shoe on, so that we end up with equal loading through whichever part of the foot is taking load at the different stages of the stance phase. Okay, so equal surface area in the heel origin for stage 1, impact and deceleration. Equal surface areas across the mid 2/3 for stage 2, which is the support phase of the stride, and equal load bearing through the toe and in the channel of the heels for the acceleration phase. If you just bear with us a second, Matteo, pass me that limb, please.
No, that's it.
No, the limb. You'll hear us talking about this channel of load bearing. Now, just some interesting little facts, and they're just guidelines, but the approximate, the width of the approximate lower end of the proximal end of the metacarpal is roughly the same width as the heels. Okay, now imagine P3 sat in this hoof capsule here. Here's our limb,
I'll hold that.
and as the limb passes over the hoof, okay, the weight of the limb, or the mass of the limb, stays within that channel, breaking forward into the acceleration phase of the stride, like so. When you get what's called off-axis rotation, in other words a conformation defect, the limb is still travelling straight in the channel, but see how P3 moves or deviates in relationship to the direction of the cannon bone. So basically the weight of the horse is passing through this channel, and as the knee goes into flexion, it unrolls into the acceleration phase. So when we fit the shoe, we want to make sure that we've got even surface area around P3. We've accounted for the width of the heels, and that the shoe is on in the direction of the carpus, and that this whole limb can pass through there without any off-axis rotation. I'm going to get our friend here, Alex, to trim this so that the wall is level with the plane of the sole, but without actually invading the sole. Okay, there's not as much foot mass or depth as you would think on this foot. It wants pulling back just a little bit, but again, it's probably pretty parallel to the hoof wall. So we're going to compensate for both of those things when we decide what shoe we're going to put on it and the way that we're going to fit it. So we're going to be quite conservative with the trim and do the remedial actions, or remediate the conditions, with shoe selection and shoe placement. You want to go ahead and trim that for me, Alex, please?
Okay.
Now again here, before you dive under there, because that's just about what you're about to do, assess it for its plane. Okay, so put your arm, put this arm down there. No, get a hold of it there. Yeah, now you're already, this is also really important. This has to be totally relaxed and underneath his elbow. You should not see this. If I put that up there, get you to stand up into the horse. Okay, keep it under there so that it's relaxed totally, look, and it flexes up into the elbow, because that's where it goes at high speed, isn't it? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Again, the same thing, if you pull it out here, you're going to get a different picture, and to see down the long axis, you've got to pull it down there, yeah?
Yeah.
But that is already the long axis, because this long axis is this.
Yeah.
All of the limb, not just part of it. Okay, so if you hide that from your view and you look over this elbow, what you'll see is the plane that you want it at. If you look down over there, what do you see?
It's quite level, slightly inside.
Slightly inside. Yeah, perfect. Okay, go ahead and trim it. And remember what you just said. That doesn't mean drop the inside, but it doesn't mean leave the outside up. Keep your back blade flush, that's it. Half a nipper's blade at a time, just follow it round. It will come out where it will come out as long as you stay in that same nipper run. If you try and jump the full blade, you'll end up riding the nippers up. Okay, yeah, now start again in the same place, and before you go any further I guarantee you that this will probably come out about there. If you look at this now, even though we just trimmed a bit of wall off, you've already got a more uniform shape from side to side. Okay? You're looking at this inner border of the white line, but as you trimmed the wall down, especially on the inside, it's gone, it gives you the appearance of going over there. Okay, this looks a bit more central, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Alright? So jump out from underneath it, weigh that up for its level.
Okay. Yep.
Level.
Yep.
Alright, so just rasp it flat, and when you've done that, see this little bit of horn that's just folding over here?
Clean that out.
Just ease that folded over edge back to where my thumbnail is, so that it's on solid wall.
Okay.
Okay, we've already taken an impression of the outer coronary band. So what I want to do now, just to give you a bit of a guideline, if I put this back on there, that's roughly the shape of our white line. I'm going to come forward a little bit, and I just want you to back the wall off. Following that radius. Don't take it back to there,
yep.
But it's that radius.
Uniform all the way around.
Just, if you look, you don't need any off there, you don't need any off there, it's just this part of the toe to that black line radius.
Okay.
Concentrate on the shape rather than being up the wall, yeah? Look at the thickness here, look. Mm-hmm. Take a bit of that, look, see it?
Yep.
Okay? Alright, put that down. And if you take it up on the stand now and top dress that to where you backed it off to, okay, to that shape, you want to put that line around about a third of the way from the bottom. Lift it up. That's it, where it meets the flare, just pop that in there. And what you're doing here is you're reaffirming the three axes of the trim. So you're making sure that what you do with the top dress matches what you saw when you were looking under the solar view. Okay, so you're matching everything up rather than just rasping wall off. Okay, it's a three-dimensional kind of trim factor. Alright, trim away. Don't come any higher than that line. Again, don't take anything that you don't want. Just matching the toe to that radius of the coronary band. We're coming back no further than where you backed it off to from the solar aspect. Alright? Look, there's your line, look, there's your radius. Come round it, look, take that point out. You mean that? Look. So there, look, yeah?
Yeah.
That's where you put it. You get over your line.
Let me just grab that back.
So that you can see it. That's the radius that you put in. There, look.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where you want to be. There. Because there's your middle.
Yep.
About there. Yeah? Matching what was underneath it.
Okay.
Yeah? Whenever you're happy.
Okay.
Pick it up and make sure everything matches what your expectation is.
So I'll just check the balance again. Okay.
Okay, now then. If you look from the, if you come to the side and take a lateral kind of scan of this limb and this hoof pattern axis, we haven't done an awful lot to it trim-wise, but because we've taken away some of that resistance from the toe, it's stood a bit squarer, pattern's dropped back a little bit. It actually looks like we've done an awful lot more than we've actually done. Okay, but we still need to account for the fourth dimension of this process, which is time, because over the next 5 weeks or so, that hoof will have migrated back to its original position. So in our shoeing plan, we want to account for some of that, and that might be in shoe selection, shoe positioning, or we might want to start thinking about adding some variance. Okay? And in this instance, I don't think that they're mechanical variants to do with the ground reaction forces, but more supportive variants to try and prop up the palmar third of the foot. So maybe some kind of impression compound or pour-in pad material, just to try and give that back third of the foot, the arch of the foot, some kind of physical support that will stop it descending down through the shoe, and then and that in turn will reduce some of the amount of dorsal migration over the shoeing cycle. Okay, so we'll map out the hind one, and then we'll discuss the general hoof conformation and morphological changes that we see. Same thing across the widest point of the frog, roughly at the heel origin. Project that forward to the intersection of the white line. Draw a perpendicular line across the inner border
What I haven't done
of the white line.
One second. Get this bit out. I'm just going to quickly just expose that white line solar interface.
Yeah, just take that little solar lip there.
Okay.
Okay. Just throw the line back on there.
Yep.
Perpendicular across the central axis here.
Okay, and then we do our
diagonally
diagonal
across.
lines.
Now at first glance, this line for the dorsal distal tip of P3 may seem a little bit far back, but in reality, if you look at the depth of the true point of frog, okay, and the solar arch, P3 is sat in there with a vaulted sort of arch It is further back, and we've discussed its post-legged conformation. This is what you would expect to see. So we're going to have to compensate for that in the way that we fit the shoe. And again here, if you look at the heel buttress, you can see that it's migrated forward slightly, okay, and the heel bulbs here are slightly squashed where it's being overloaded through the back. Okay, so this again is going to be related to shoe placement rather than shoe style. Incidentally, the hind feet roughly correspond, the center of rotation is roughly in the same place as it is in the front feet as a proportion of the overall base from heel bulb to the end of the toe. There's debate about whether or not hind feet break over, but they use the acceleration phase to push off into the anterior phase of the stride, which is the same equivalent as breaking over as far as my opinion is concerned. Okay, here's our bone column again, sitting in there. Again, roughly look the same width as the heels. The distal aspect of the carpal joint. P3 sat in the foot there. Limb rolls over. Kinetic energy from the tendons then pushes the limb up into the air, propels it forward into the anterior phase of the stride, pushing the fetlock, the coffin joint and the fetlock into flexion. Okay.
Just draw that bit line.
Okay? Yeah.
Okay. We're now going to evaluate the feet themselves in terms of the hoof conformation. Okay, let's focus down here onto the foot. If we look here, you can see we've got a reasonable hoof passing axis as far as hoof wall and midline of the phalanges. If you stand at the side of it, you've also got a reasonable heel toe height ratio, although the coronary band projection, can you just pass me that steel rod? We said before, I'm going to let go of that front one.
Yeah.
If you take the trajectory of the coronary band, that should come forward and meet roughly, I'll try and just, you stay there, Ross, be below, slightly below the knee, and you can see that it's slightly above it. We've got a reasonable toe height ratio, but when you look here, come on down, let's have it, oh dear. Again, this deep point of frog, true point of frog, is giving me an indication that the P3 is a lot further down in the foot there. Can I borrow a knife? Give me a straight blade, mate. Now if you look here now, look, there's the origin of the white line back there, the inner edge. Okay, and as I look down this foot, if I trim this excessive toe off and leave a bit of this heel, although it's slightly medial high, okay, I'll lose some of this toe length, and what I should end up with, because it's slightly post-legged, is a slightly broken forward hoof passing axis. Alex, would you like to just trim that for me, please?
Yes.
Now, I want to say something about assessing level behind. It's important, particularly with these horses, that when you're assessing the level of the horse, first of all you make sure that as you're looking at the foot, move yourself inwards, you're in line with the spine. You're looking down over the hock. If you can let that relax, down, 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 almost resting on your toe. There. Everything's loose and relaxed and in line with the spine. As relaxed as you can and as far back as you can. There. So you almost can't see the phalanges. So all of this bone column is aligned with where it's joined up to here, the lumbosacroiliac. Okay, if you start, if I get Alex to just take one step this way, bring the foot with you, you've got a different picture there. And
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, now it looks high inside, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Go back to how it was. Now it looks reasonably level apart from the end of the heel, yeah?
Yep.
Now put it up into your lap, how you were going to before, and come over here, push down. Now what does it look like? High outside.
Yep.
Okay? So it's really, really important that when you're assessing the foot for level in relationship to the limb, that you have it lined up with the skeleton. Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to nip a little bit of that toe off.
Yeah. Just keep going half a nipper blade back at a time. It'll come out where it is going to come out. Don't change the plane of the nippers. It will stop. See?
Okay.
Go, start again from where you were.
Yep.
Follow it round half a nipper's blade at a time. Keep it half a nipper's blade at a time on the same plane. Don't let it pick up. It will come out where you want it to. It should be just at the end of the heel. You're picking up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Put it on the solar edge. Just ease through it. Look down it again. Check it for level. Or orientation rather than level.
Relax. Okay. Yep. Just need to take a little bit off.
Yeah.
Rasp.
Rasp away.
Bring this in.
Whoa, stop for a second. We mentioned before when we were doing the live horse observation in the static phase, the way that the point of force in the shod foot pushes the outside across. So what we're going to try and do here with either the trim or shoe position is end up with an equal amount of foot either side of the central axis of the frog. Okay, now to maintain the strength in the hoof wall, to be able to attach the shoe safely and securely, okay, we need to maintain a reasonable thickness of wool. So we want roughly an equal thickness of wool from quarter to quarter, from the inside edge of the white line to the outside. Everything else that is out from side to side, we'll do with the shoe fit.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so here, you've just got a little bit here to take,
And a little bit
and a little bit there, and just make sure it's level.
Okay.
Try and be a bit more sympathetic to it. You try and move more towards its centre. Yeah, if it's mulling you about, it's because, generally because they're uncomfortable. Okay, this already has a stifling and suspensory issue. So you've got everything flexed and extended and you're yanking it out. Not going to like it.
Okay. And I'm just going to give it a rest. On myself.
Alright. If you are now going to top dress this, or flare dress it as we call it in the UK, make sure that you only dress it to where you backed it off to. Don't take horn off that you don't need to, because you'll end up back in the same position. Okay, this one has not been too distorted, so there isn't a lot to do to it. But again, try and make sure that you maintain its shape. Can I have the the contour gauge? If you'd like to slip that just around the bottom of the storage band, just about the level of that. No, down a bit, where the door is. There.
Yeah.
Yeah, push that through.
Just hold this down.
Right, now.
Did you get that? Yeah.
Okay, that roughly now is the shape of the toe and the shape of the white line. If you want to verify that by looking underneath.
Okay.
If you look at this part there, put it in the white line, look.
Hold this down.
Yeah.
Can we draw around that?
Yeah, you can do. If you turn it over now, and come back to that line there, relax, come back to that line there where your P3 was, draw around that.
Let me get that straight.
Here we go. Okay, there's P3, and if I continue through there, it comes roughly there. There's the Palmer processes, semilunar crest, the insertion of the deep flexor tendon. Navicular bone is about there, and this part here is the impar ligament. If we drill a hole through there, it will go through the impar ligament and up into the center of rotation of the coffin joint. Move your hand. Somewhere around there. Okay?
Okay.
Alright, take it forward.
Okay.
Right, if you take that now. Right, I'm going to put this little line on as a guideline for Alex. When he's shaping up the toe with the foot, he's going to be following that radius, which is the same as the radius of the coronary band. Yeah?
Okay.
It's only a guide, but it'll stop him from over flare dressing the medial side. Which it doesn't need. Which it doesn't need.
Okay.
Yeah, so just from there, so follow it round to match that radius. So you're looking at this.
Yep. Okay.
So just go around the bottom of it first.
Bring that round.
Yeah, put the shape in.
Put that shape into it, following this line.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just dress it back to what you backed it up to. Go around that inside, mate. Doesn't want it, does it?
Nope. More?
Well, to where you backed it up to.
Take it to flat.
To where you backed it up
Okay.
to, yeah. Okay, put that down. Okay, if you look down this now, okay, you look down through the limb, remember we said that we wanted the limb to line up and the bearing surface to roughly dissect the limb equally in half. There's our stifle, there's our centre of the joint, okay, and you've got an even radius around the toe and roughly about the same surface area medially and laterally. Although the medial wall is slightly more upright than the lateral wall, we can deal with that in the way that we fit it, which is to not fit it too tight. Okay, one of the things we need to discuss, just throw me a hind shoe, will you please? Is the anatomy of a shoe. Right back to Hoof shoemaking 101, you told me you want the outside nails a little bit coarser than the inside. The inside branch is narrowed up slightly because the hoof wall is slightly narrower. The reason that it's narrower is because of the compression down the medial side, because the limb is attached to the sacroiliac. Okay, so when you make the shoe, you can still have width to the wall inside to support it and stabilize it and stop it from becoming more and more upright, but the branch needs to be slightly narrower. Now the other one, yeah, to accommodate the differences in the morphological features over time, the way that this hoof is distorted because of constant compression of this foot medially by the action force. Okay? Doesn't matter what shoe it is, it's totally irrelevant, but notice that this branch is narrower to accommodate the fact that the distance between the white line and the wall is narrower medially than it is laterally. But I've still got the ability to be able to give this foot some support by fitting it wide and still be able to nail it safely and securely. Okay, having dealt with the hinds now, let's turn our attention to the fronts and talk about the shoeing plan. We've already described here that we think that the dorsal hoof wall is parallel with the peripheral surface of P3, so I don't want to rasp the toe back anymore, because all I'm going to do is lose the integral strength of the wall. If we do that, then what will happen is that the toe will collapse, the sole will collapse through the shoe, okay, and we'll just end up with a mess. So I need to keep the strength in it, but what I need to do is create a situation that gives me a bit better biomechanical efficiency for this limb. It's going to take some of the strain off these heels without having to elevate it. So what we've opted for is a broad webbed side clip shoe with a bit of a roll toe. But let's talk about what clips and some of these variants do, because it's quite important to understand what it is that they achieve and what they don't achieve. Now, the thing about clips is that they're designed primarily to stabilize the shoe on the foot. A good strong clip, particularly at the sides, is worth at least 2 nails. But they also restrict the foot. So you don't want to be overcutting the clips in that clamp the foot up, but you want to be able to hold it where the foot is over expanding. And in this instance, because we want to enhance the transition through the support phase into the acceleration phase, or the breakover bit, we're also going to add a roll toe. But a lot of people think that the roll toe actually speeds up breakover, and it doesn't do that at all. What it does is it reduces the energy requirement from the deep flexor tendon to flex the foot into the acceleration phase. Okay, at the point where the horse is going over into breakover, this is the point where the deep flexor tendon is at its maximum strain. Okay, so in relieving the toe and removing any sharp edges gets rid of any shear resistance from the toe and reduces the energy requirement to pull that limb through into the swing face. Now, this shoe has got a bit of a roll toe on it, but because I want to be underneath it, I'm going to add a little bit more to it. I'm going to use the side clips because I want to be underneath it, and not because I particularly want to clamp this foot, but I'm going to keep them there because the horse is working and I don't want the shoe sliding back any further than where I put it. Alright, so it's adding a little bit of support to the wall, stabilization of the shoe, okay, and then I'll put the rest of the mechanics into the front of the toe. Also on this shoe, we've got some wide and a European onion heels. This will allow me to get on or fit onto these distorted heel buttresses, but still give it optimum length without having to have too much width either side. Now, one of the problems with, or one of the associated problems with shoeing with length and width is people's perception of premature shoe loss rather. They're not designed to crash into themselves, and they certainly don't ordinarily pull the shoes by catching the back of the heels. What happens is during the landing phase of the other limb, if there's any kind of delay in movement, because that limb is coming to the outside of the front limb, they catch here and the heel quarters. Now during the unrollment phase, if you've got a flat end to the toe, there's a bit of resistance as it passes through, the foot actually springs off the shoe. Could you just pass me one of those Hoof capsules, please? The one on the back, the Hoof capsule. Yeah, that one will be great. Okay, so imagine our hoof in here as it comes forward into the enrollment bit. The deep flexor tendon is pulling on the back of P3 in here, and what happens is that. Have we got the old shoe somewhere? Okay. If you look at the old shoe here, you see these wear marks and this divot in the heel of the foot. A lot of people think that that's expansion of a hoof capsule. It's not at all, it's this. As it moves over, foot comes up, as it lands it crashes down into it. That's how they lose them. They leave the shoe in the ground and the foot goes past it and rips out past the nails. Okay, put that back. See the wear groove here. When you've got the proportions right underneath the skeletal structure and you've got rid of the leverage off the toe, you don't get that. So that's what we're going to try and put into this shoe. Okay, so we've talked about clips, we've talked about roll toe. Let's talk about this. Too much length gives too much leverage on the heels. Okay, this is proportionate. Okay, the length is relevant to the skeletal structure. Could you pass me a pair of dividers, calipers? They're on there somewhere, or? All right, perfect. All right. Okay, we've been through the hoof mapping process, but it's not a process that's in isolation. The hoof mapping goes with the proportions of the foot. Now, one of the key kind of indicators is the ratio of dorsal hoof wall to center of rotation. If I take these dividers, that length of the dorsal hoof wall, coronary hairline to the end of the dorsal hoof wall, should roughly be the same as it is from the end of the toe to the center of rotation of the joint, or the widest point. And also from the point of force, which is about 3/8 inches back from the point of frog, to the widest point of the heel. So you need these three proportions to be roughly the same length as a dorsal hoof wall. Okay? That lines up with the hoof mapping protocol. Okay, so you've got position of your center of rotation, and then you've got uniform proportions around it. The next important proportion is what they call the heel toe height ratio, and that should be roughly about 3:1. But that reminds me that I need to just highlight what is normal. Okay, now normal is generally calculated as a median number from a group of data. So if I collect all the ages of the people in this room, I'll come up with an average of 35. That's selectively normal because it's the middle number. Unfortunately, we're not all 35, and there's a way of calculating what's called a standard deviation. But to be within the normal range, all of the people in this room should fall in what's called a normal distribution, which is the median or the mid number plus or minus 2 times the standard deviation, and they all fit under what's called a bell curve. So normal is actually a range of the midline plus or minus a certain amount. Okay, because this horse doesn't have a toe angle of 54 degrees does not mean that it's abnormal. If it doesn't quite fit the proportions, doesn't mean that it's not normal. It might be normal for this horse. Okay, so we're showing individuals. Okay, now then, will I give you that back? All right, so what we've come up with here is a plan that's reliant on shoe placement rather than being able to force the hoof capsule into this perceived normal hoof pastern axis and normal proportions, because it won't get there because of its own conformation and the way that the hoof is morphed into a specific shape. We're using shoe placement plus the variance that we put in the shoe to create a more efficient biomechanical model that should allow that hoof to remodel around itself, much like the normal relationship of wound healing. If I cut myself here and I leave it to open, it fills with scar tissue, and then the wound is under tension and I get pain and constant building up of scar tissue. But if I cut myself and I pull it together with a couple of pieces of sellotape, because it's now in a more normal alignment, it heals up internally very quickly, and that's the principle of using shoe placement to deal with hoof morphology. So, in this instance, just like horseshoeing 101, I want my toe nails to line up with my heel buttress, I want the quarters in the right place, and I want the point of breakover to be in front of this line, or dorsal to this line, where I've drawn in what should be the dorsal distal tip of P3. So when I put my shoe on, I should be there. Now, because this shoe extends back to the widest point of the frog, that's sufficient length in front. Anything longer than that would create leverage, because I wouldn't have a 50-50 relationship between the end of the toe and center of rotation, and the center of rotation and the end of the heels. Okay, so it's about the proportions around the middle of P3. That's what determines length or leverage. Okay, so we've done the hoof assessment, we've done the trimming, we've got the hoof capsule as best as we can get it in terms of a balance and a form and a shape, and now we're getting down to shoe selection. But in this instance we've got a number of options, because we've got a lameness issue and a horse that is primarily being kept to do a sporting activity, eventing, we need to have that discussion with the owner, because it's no good us just putting on shoes to kind of remediate lamenesses if the owner's not going to A, cooperate with the remedial actions that she needs to take, or there's financial considerations. So we need to have a discussion with the owner whether she wants us to just shoe it as if it was going eventing, or whether or not what type of work she's going to do with it. Is she going to try and do some light work and bring it back into work slowly, or more importantly, does she feel that she needs us to try and intervene, or wants us to try and intervene to ameliorate this lameness condition that has been diagnosed as within the suspensory region, proximal suspensory desmitis. So I'm going to call her over and just basically ask her, what's your plan with this horse for the next 6 weeks?
Well, we're bringing her back into work as she's had time off since the end of the eventing season, and we're hoping to get her out doing some show jumping.
Okay, well on the evaluation that we did outside, we still saw a slight left hind lameness, and although that's not a huge lameness, I recommend that you approach the vet and deal with that. But from a shoeing point of view, I've got a couple of options, or you've got a couple of options. I can try and ameliorate that with a therapeutic shoe, which is a broader toe with a wider branch to try and give the foot a bit of support and try and prevent it from sinking into the ground, so that the fatlock joint and the hock are not dorsoflexing, and therefore putting strain on the suspensory ligament. Or I can shoe it in a way that will allow you to take it, do a bit of show jumping, but it'll depend on what surface you're going on. Or I can just shoe it up as if we was going back into full work. But you've got to decide, because there's management changes and financial implications, what you think is best for the horse and for yourself. So if I explain to you what we've got with the therapeutic thing, you can make your mind up.
Okay.
All right. Come on, mate. What we want to do is use a shoe that gives a lot more length to the back and supports the back half of the foot and stops the fetlock from hyperextending over the back of the foot in the surface. Use this broad section of the toe to try and prevent the foot from sinking into the floor, and to give it a little bit of width to allow it to sort of expand and float on the top of the surface rather than sink in. And it's that sinkage that's putting the strain on the suspensory ligament here. So the other option is you shoe up as if it was evented, and you just end up with it shot to the end of the heel. It'll last a 6-week cycle, be a little bit better for premature shoe loss or injury, but it may not deal with the overriding lameness, okay, or the causes of the lameness. And then finally, you can shoe it in more of a riding horse style without the therapeutic aid of the wide toe, but just give it a little bit of width and length to try and support it that way. But again, it may not help depending on the surface. And I feel that in the surface that you're on, that deep fibre sand, that's half of the problem. So I think, from my point of view, I'd rather try and deal with that, but that has implications from a management point of view, because if you start hacking it out with a broad toe, then that's going to act differently on a firm surface than it is in the surface that you're working it in.
Okay. So, since we do a lot more in the surface, it's probably best to go with this shoe.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Thanks a lot. We'll get on with it.